Hello, hello. Welcome back to the Business of Happiness podcast. Hi, guys. Thank you for joining us again today. I am so excited about today's conversation because I am going to introduce you to a really special man who I've recently met and just absolutely fallen in love with the work that he's doing and with his perspective. So I know you're going to appreciate this today. Today with me, joining me on the podcast is Dr. Richard Madow, and he is a complete trailblazer in our industry. He's a phenomenal keynote speaker. And in his keynote, he really introduces some really interesting components: music, humor, spontaneity. He's also an incredible consultant, and he's been recognized as a leader in dental consulting and dental education. And so many thousands, in fact, dentists across the country have actually benefited from his perspective and his support. So without any further ado, please join me in welcoming Dr. Madow. Hey, Rich.
Hey, Tarryn, thanks so much for having me. Thanks for that beautiful intro. I am so glad that our paths crossed. Obviously, we've known about each other for a while, but we actually got to do a little panel discussion together. And I just felt such a simpatico with you. Even though we probably teach different things in many ways, we're on the same page when it comes to the big stuff that really, really counts. And I just really enjoyed hearing you speak. And I'm a big booster and fan of what you do. And it's just great to be on your show.
Oh, I couldn't have said it better. I agree completely. So the panel that we were on was called the Stress-Free Dentist Summit. And I agree. We had some very similar thoughts on what that looks like and on what our colleagues have been experiencing over the recent years and decades. And I'd love for you to just start us out. You mentioned something on that panel that we didn't have enough time to expand on, but I'd love for you to share your perspective here now. And you mentioned the negative happiness equation. So I'd love for you to tell me, what is the negative happiness
the
equation?
famous the
Yes.
famous negative happiness equation. And I know that we talked about, maybe on this interview we talk about burnout in dentistry a little bit, which it's a sad topic. It's a
Yeah.
great topic to talk about, but I really think that so much of what we call burnout, stress, whatever you want to call it, things that make us feel the way we don't want to feel, which often leads to destructive behavior, is caused by a negative happiness equation. And, a lot of people say, like, why is dentistry so demanding? Somebody who's not in dentistry, what do you have to complain about? You're a dentist. You went to school and worked your butt off, but now you got it made. You drill a few holes, you make billions of dollars, you have people doing all the work for you. What are you so stressed out about? But, they don't realize that dentistry is, first of all, incredibly physically demanding.
Mm-hmm.
We could be as ergonomic and conscientious of our posture as we can try to do that all day long, but it's physically demanding. It's just exhausting. Dentistry is emotionally demanding. We've got, anxious patients, and we're leaders of a team, and we've got to deal with insurance and collecting money and all those things. So it's both mentally and physically demanding. Dentists tend to be a little bit isolated, and it's great to be in study clubs and network with our colleagues. But for most of the time, we're there in our own little fiefdom, or whatever you want to call it, which adds to the stress. I know it's a stereotype, but we're perfectionists by nature. The thing that I think people don't often talk about is that we see people at their worst. And, our patients, I would say, generally, predominantly, are nice people, because most people are nice, good people. But we're seeing them at their worst. We're seeing them when they don't want to be there. Some of them are in pain. They're frightened. We're gagging them and shoving water down their throat and charging them for the pleasure of doing all this. So we're not really seeing people at their best. I'm convinced that those most annoying patients that we have, if you happen to run into them at the happy hour, they'd probably be pretty cool. So I know I'm going off on a tangent here, but I just wanted to start by pointing out that being a dentist is stressful, and there's nothing to be ashamed about in admitting this, because if we try to hold it all in, you certainly know what happens when you try to hold in negative emotions. Eventually you burst, and that's never a good thing. So let's start by saying, don't feel guilty. Dentistry is stressful. There's no question about it. I don't know if you wanted to chime in before we got to the negative happiness
I already
equation.
have so much. I'm taking notes here because there's so much I want to talk about you just mentioned there. But this try to hold it all in component that you just mentioned, because I'm guessing that anyone who's listening right now in dentistry, anybody who's out there listening to this conversation is saying, yes, 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 that all makes sense. That all tracks. That's exactly what I'm experiencing. And we hold it all in under the guise of professionalism or the fact that we need to hold a good face. We need to put up
Right.
a good impression.
Martyrdom, whatever you want to call it,
Not just
right?
that, but we want patients to come and see us. We actually
Yeah,
wanna seem like
true.
an office you want to come to, so we gotta put on this mask of everything's cool, everything's fine all the time. Don't you feel like that's also a component of why we're experiencing so much stress and overwhelm, is that there's this need to constantly be pushing down how we feel and pretending it isn't so?
Oh my God, 100%.
Yeah,
It's kind of like we have to act like nothing's wrong,
right.
no matter how many things are wrong, because we don't want to see our patients look at us in any way but the best professional who's there for them. And we are those people, but it's not easy. And then that could result in just all this internal anguish, which sucks. Am I allowed to say sucks
Yes,
on this
you are,
podcast?
yes.
Okay. I'll push it a little further later and see how
Well, I
what kind of
think we
language we can
need
get
to,
away with.
because that's the point, is that we're not expressing it as dentists. We're not giving ourselves space to say, this really sucks sometimes. This is really hard. So, yeah, scream it from the rooftop, because I agree. I think the more we can normalize this conversation, the more we can let people know you're not alone.
Right. And I think also we're afraid to let our team members know that we are a little bit vulnerable sometimes. And I think you can still be a good leader and show some of your true self, even some of your weaknesses. And I think, you're in a way respected more by the team if they know you're not some uptight, 100% perfectionist, strict person with a pole up their butt. But yes, you're a real person too, and you're trying your hardest, and you can't always nail it. And yes, you do have high standards and high expectations, but you're not perfect. And I felt a lot better once I started letting my team know that I'm not perfect. It's so funny. I remember one of my favorite lines that one of my team members ever said to me was, I did something really stupid and I didn't have to admit it, but I admitted it to my team in a meeting. And my office manager just looked at me and said, Dr. Madow, you may be the village idiot, but you're our village idiot. And
Oh,
I just thought, wow, they've got my back.
yeah.
They do respect me, kind of like Sally Field when she won her Oscar. You do like me, you do like me, and it felt really good. And I think maybe at that moment I realized that I got to be who I am. I can't play this perfect person because I'm not.
And
And
isn't it it's
I
so
think it made everything
crazy
better.
what that part of us that wants to hide our imperfections, it's actually the vulnerability of it that creates the closer connections, that creates the more meaningful relationships.
Totally agree.
Mm.
So should we get back to the negative happiness equation?
We should. I'm gonna bring up one more thing along this line, because
Oh, please do.
it's such an important component that I think you've touched on, and that is even beyond the dental practice in our personal lives. Something, and I wanna know your reflection on this with all the incredible dentists you work with, because 'cause you've had so much experience working with so many clients. I have witnessed that same need to hold up the perfection, hold up this image of I've got it all together, extends to even to our families or our friends. There's like this pressure to make it look like we've got it all together all the time, even beyond our patients and our teams.
Oh, I 100% agree. As a matter of fact, in my keynote, I often talk about an experience I had in my life that landed me in cardiac intensive care unit in my early 40s, and I was literally seconds from death. It's a crazy story. I was in one of those situations where I was like in the hospital hallucinating, thinking that if I had done this instead of this, today would be the day of my funeral. And that was just a crazy,
Wow.
that's a long story that's maybe a story for another day, but I talk about it sometimes in my keynote. But I am convinced that much of that was caused by my kind of interest in playing the game of the external great person who has this,
Mm.
has the financial success and has the perfect family and has, the perfect vacations and, the best haircut or whatever
Yeah.
it leads to. And look, I do, I love my family more than anything in the world, but it doesn't mean that I have to act like I'm perfect to them all the time. I think it's actually detrimental to do it. So yes, it does extend to our personal lives. And that's why, Taryn, you may recall, I am not a fan of the term work life
Right.
balance. Because I think when we say, oh, we got to have a great work, and I know people that say it are well intended and have a lot of good things to teach and help us with. So I'm not against that term specifically, but I'm not a fan of it because I think when you say work life balance, to me anyway, and I know to many, it insinuates that life good, work bad. You know, work stressful,
Yep.
life fun. So let's balance it out. But I totally disagree. I think, especially as dentists, but for anyone, I don't care if you're the greeter at Walmart or if you're inspecting curbs for the county. You know, all these jobs are important. Every job is important. But to say that we're compartmentalizing our work and our life and trying to balance the two, to me, just doesn't ring true. I think our life is our work.
Yes.
And when we blend them, we find the best success and the most happiness.
I totally agree with you. I feel the same way. And I love the idea of what you were just mentioning is that it really pits the one against the other, which is part of the problem. And to even consider that they're not blended is a mistake to begin with because they're so intricately interwoven within each other. And, thinking about last night, my husband's on call in the middle of the night. He got a page at, 3 a.m. because one of his patients was bleeding profusely. So, of course, that becomes a part of our.
Yikes.
I know. He's an oral surgeon, so he gets that permission. But that becomes a part of our lives. That is a part of our life. It's not something that we
Right.
can avoid. It's not, how are we going to incorporate that in our lives? And then the other thing that drives me crazy is this thought of, I have to leave my private life at the door. We ask our team members, leave your home life at the door when you're here. And I think if your mom is, recovering from cancer, or if your kid is really sick in the hospital, trying to leave your private life at the door when you walk into work in the morning is impossible. There's a blending of the two. If you're exhausted when you show up to work in the morning, that's going to impact your work. So there's almost an impossibility to extricate the two from one another.
I totally agree. I'd love to use the word extricate. That's just like bonus points. But it's really funny because one of the things I talk about when it comes to team relations is something that I did every morning was every single morning when I came in, I would greet each team member by name and I made time for this in my life and in my schedule, have 1 or 2 minutes of personal chit chat with them. And, could be, hey, did you see the Ravens game last night? It was
Mhm.
awesome. Or you said you were, did you see the latest episode of, whatever TV show they might be watching? But it also could be, how's your dad doing? I know
Mhm.
he's not well. Or even, hey, I'm so sorry to hear you had a fight with your boyfriend or whatever. You can't ignore those
No,
things. Now, that doesn't mean that when your dental assistant is on the job, she could be thinking about her sick mom and not hand you the proper instrument.
right.
You can't do that. But it doesn't mean, as you said, leave your problems at the door. Impossible. And I'd love that my team appreciated that I recognized them first thing in the morning as a real person. And then later on in the day, they became my dental hygienist, my incredible insurance coordinator, whatever you want to call them. But there was that little tinge of personal touch in there too. And I think it made a big difference. And again, I said, I always felt they had my back. And I think that's one of the reasons because we all saw each other as real people.
That's such a great point. Now, I'm going to be a devil's advocate here for a moment
Sure.
because I remember when I was at the height of stress and burnout in practice, and I felt like everything landed on me. And I was terrified because I felt like I couldn't hold up all the plates, the spinning plates at the same time. If I heard every morning I have to show up to work and connect personally with every single team member before the day begins, I think that would have overwhelmed me. It would have felt like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, there's more I've got to do. Like, I remember even being stressed out about thinking about their love languages, and recording and knowing like how to say thank you and value each member, and being so overwhelmed that I had to carry that. So if someone's listening and thinking, yeah, that sounds amazing, to create a personal relationship, a personal touch point with each team member, but I hit the ground running and I've got 13 patients waiting for me in ortho. That's our world. What do you suggest? What is one way to start that relationship nurturing with the team that is so important? But what is one way to start that connection?
Yeah. Well, first of all, Really great point. Fair enough. You had a lot of stress at that point in your life, and you don't want to do anything that's going to make you blow up before you even
Right.
see the first patient. So I think your point's well taken, and maybe at that point in your life, this would have been an impossibility. But and everybody's different, and everybody handles things different ways. But as somebody who's been a coach consultant for 30 years and has been in hundreds of dental practices, one of the things that really bugs me is when the first patient's at 9 o'clock and the doctor comes in at 8:59 or 9:05, even worse, and boom, everyone's in dental mode and there's nothing personal going on. We are in dental mode from the second the doctor walks into the door. I just think that's stressful. I think
Mhm.
it's chaotic. And I think that, I'm thinking of a specific doctor, although I've seen it hundreds of times. I think this person's practice would have been much better if they would have made time to come in a little bit earlier and made 30 seconds to connect with each team member. I don't think it would have stressed them out. Maybe at first it would have, because again, you were burdened by the fact that you had to do this. And that's really fair. I mean, that's completely understandable. Sometimes we're burdened by things we have to do. And then we find out once we do them, not only are they not difficult, but they actually make our lives better. So I would challenge somebody who feels this is a burden just to ease into it a
Yeah.
little bit.
Love it.
And don't get there at 9 o'clock for if your first patient's at 9 o'clock. Whatever you do
Yeah, it's such a
drives me crazy.
I love that.
There's another thing that drives me crazy too.
What is that?
Not in context of what we're talking about, but I'll just say it anyway, because I've heard it in so many dental practices. When I hear a doctor or a team member say, we've got a crown prep in room 3,
Oh.
that bugs the crap out of me. Unless you walk in that door and there's a big tooth on the chair and nothing else, you've got a human being in room 3 who is probably scared shitless. Am I allowed to say that on this podcast?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. Who's probably scared shitless, who doesn't want to be there,
Yeah.
who's worried if it's going to hurt, who's worried that they have to pay $1,000 even though they thought their insurance covered 100% of everything. And if we treat them as that human being who is anxious, who has a family and a career and drives a car and loves the Beatles or whatever,
Yeah.
our lives are going to be much easier. And if we treat them as the crown prep in room 3, it's just not going to be good for anyone.
This is awesome because what this is really touching on is what actually something that came up on our panel, which is the value of relationships. And not just in terms of the success of your practice, in terms of the relationship building with your team, also with your patients, as you're mentioning right there, as seeing them as more than the crown prep, but also in terms of your own happiness. Adding that quality to your life, to your day. And if you're flying in the door as the first patient seated, then it's putting you in that place of fight or flight, that stress mode, as opposed to giving yourself that gentle runway of easing yourself into the day and allowing yourself that connection with the other team members, and then being ready in a calm space to be present for that patient.
I so agree.
Yeah.
It's so funny. I was on a plane not that long ago, and I don't like conversations on planes. I want to put my headphones on, especially if I'm just coming from, I just did an 8-hour
Yeah.
seminar and I'm
You've
exhausted
been on
and I can't.
stage.
Right. They don't stay for 8 hours. I've got
Yeah.
laryngitis. I sit next to some person, and well-meaning, I'm sure, they say, "So, are you coming? Is this a work trip or a pleasure trip? What do you do?" But I just put my big. That's why I don't use earbuds on planes. I got those big headphones that I put on. But anyway, invariably, this just happened not long ago. Somebody was asking me about what I do, and they said, "Well, what do you lecture about?" And I just didn't feel like talking. I said, "Wow, it's really hard to explain. I did a 7 hours of lecture today." And they said to me, I remember they said, like, if you could break it down into like 20 seconds, what do you lecture about? And I thought first of all, I thought it was a great
Great
question.
question.
I knew once I answered, they'd probably leave me alone. And I just thought, like, I've been spending the last 30 years teaching dentists and team members to treat every single patient like they're a really important person and to be enthusiastic about everything you do. And I thought, boom. And that's like it,
Yeah.
you know? I think if you do that, especially, well, they're both important, but the enthusiasm part is so important. I don't know how we got on this tangent, but I think we always have to realize that we've done 1,000 crown preps and a million scaling and root planings and all these things, but to the patient, it's a very novel experience. And especially when they haven't quite committed to the treatment yet, we've got to be really enthusiastic about how it's going to help their life and how it's going to make things better and get them disease free and smiling and whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. and we got to do it enthusiastically. And that doesn't mean you have to be an extrovert. It doesn't mean you have to be somebody like us who are comfortable on stage. It just means in your own way, be enthusiastic about it.
Yeah, beautiful. Okay. So now I'm really fascinated because I couldn't agree with you more. And I want to know how this relates to the negative happiness equation.
Oh, now you're bringing that up.
I
No,
am, because I see a very
just kidding.
strong link in there. And I'm so glad we started with this because what I'm hearing from you is this is a great way to grow your practice. This is obviously a way to value your patients and to make them feel special. A great way to value your team members and make them feel special. Of course, this is going to be a successful dental practice. But how does this play into the happiness for the dentist?
Yeah, it's a great question, of course. I'm really glad you're asking this because I think, and I mean this in the best way ever, this is kind of backwards because I think for the
Mm.
last 20 minutes, and you're such a genius in the way you structured this interview. I'm so impressed. Um, for the last 20 minutes, we've been talking about ways to overcome the negative happiness equation, yet we haven't defined it, which I think is a really powerful way to kind of back into this. So, congrats on that. The negative happiness equation is something that way too many dentists and team members, I don't know if you have many team members in your audience, but team members have, great. Team members have it as well. It kind of means we make a little deal with ourselves internally. And the deal goes like this: I want to enjoy my life when I'm not in the dental office. And I want to have fun and do things that stimulate me and make me into a whole person, not just a dental person. And those things could be different for everybody, but one thing's pretty much the same. Those things usually cost money. You know, I mean, let's face it, the fun things we do, I don't care if you're a golfer, someone who loves dining out, somebody who, whatever, likes to go to the movies or travel, or, you have a hobby like knitting or whatever it is, those things always cost money. So you make a deal with yourself. Well, in order to enjoy myself, or doing nice things for your family,
Mhm.
you want to take your whole family out to dinner, costs money. So you make a deal with yourself. I want to enjoy myself on the weekends and on vacations. So in order to do that, I need to earn money. So in order to earn money, I've got a good job in a dental office that pays well, but I really don't like it that much. But that's okay because I can tolerate the negativity I'm getting from my career because it earns me the money that I need to enjoy myself when I'm not at the office. And then that becomes a negative happiness equation because we're trying to balance this. It's one of the reasons I don't like the work life balance term. We're trying to balance this, but the balance never works. The net equation, what's the phrase I'm looking for? The net is never a plus, it's always a
Nope.
minus. Always a minus
Mm.
because we're stressed out. We get the Sunday night
Yep.
blues. We get a sick feeling on Sunday evening that we have to go to the dental office again. We're looking forward to this week long vacation for months.
I know.
And then the first couple of days, we're just trying to wind down from our stress in the dental office. Then we might have fun for a couple of days. Then we're thinking, oh, shoot, I got to go home soon. I got to go back to the dental office. And our stress level rises again. This is the classic negative happiness equation.
That's it. That's it. Exactly. And that idea of I'm just going to push through, I'm just going to force my way through so I can get to the weekend. And I don't know if you've ever done the math on that, but it's terrifying when you look at 10 years of only living your life 1.5 days on the weekend if we start stressing about it on Sunday evening. It's terrible.
Right.
5.5 days of the week, you're living in misery only to live for that 1.5 days, or maybe the 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks paid vacation that you take a year.
It's so true. It's kind of the TGIF mentality.
Mm,
But I think we should make it TGIM, TGIT,
yeah.
whatever every day.
Yeah.
We should be thankful for. Well, that's a different topic altogether about thankfulness and
But I
gratitude, which I know
agree.
we could talk for
I ag
hours
I
about. But
agree. I hate the term, hump day on Wednesdays, like you're
I know,
halfway over, you're over the hump. I
right?
agree. I think it's so toxic, and it really does set you up for failure.
Or when I hear somebody say, "Today's my Friday," it's like
Yeah.
I'm not even sure what that means,
Yeah.
but I don't like it.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Okay, so
Yep.
we talked about the value of relationship building. We talked about the value of kind of coming to work and easing your way into the day. We talked a little bit, you touched on the value of gratitude, which is awesome. And in there, I can also hear a little bit about being present in the moment with that patient, connecting to them as a human, not just a class 2 MOD or Oh, I just outed myself as an orthodontist.
I was going to say, you orthodontist. Oh, I, you know, orthodontists don't have any stress. You go in there, you walk
Yeah,
from room to room. That looks good. Tighten that up a little bit. See you next. Okay, boom. You're done. They make $10 million a
there you go.
year. They don't do anything. Well, everybody should be an
There
orthodontist.
you go. I think so too.
Right.
But you mentioned a couple of
You
very
confirmed it.
I
Okay.
did, I did. Ironically, for all my orthodontists out there listening, I have so many orthodontists who are clients of mine who are really struggling with this idea of living a fulfilled life. Despite all the glitz and glam of ortho, we still see this over and over again. And so you've mentioned some of these great suggestions. But what do you think is the one, if someone listening right now was going to take one action step to improve the way they feel about living as a dentist and a human being and combining the work life that they have, what would you recommend to them?
This is the loaded question of all time.
Mm.
And I kind of feel like that old joke where a dentist is in the desert and finds a lamp and rubs the genie lamp, and the genie pops out. And the genie says, "You have one wish. What will it be?" And the dentist pulls this map out of his pocket and says, "Here's a map of the Middle East. And I just want you to find a way to make peace in the Middle East, Genie. Can you do it?" And the genie pauses for a second and says, "Wow, that's really tough. Give me another wish. Maybe I'll be better with that one." And the dentist says, "Okay, I want you to make me happy as a dentist." And the genie says, "Let me see that map of the Middle East again."
Come on, it can't be that hard. I love that
Okay,
joke though. That's awesome.
let's start with can I start with my famous seating chart rule? I think this was
Ooh.
so important in my life. My famous seating chart rule. Now, this was in my consulting, writing, speaking business, not my dental office, but I kind of did something similar in the dental office. I just didn't give it a name. But at the Madow Center for Dental Practice Success, many years ago, we were having one of our holiday dinners, and my brother Dave, who's my business partner and co-founder, he's not quite as active in the business these days, but in those days, he certainly was. And we've got we had like 16 team members, and we reserved a big oval table at the steakhouse downtown in the semi-private room, blah, blah, blah. And Dave and I get there early because I get to everything early, but we get there early so we can put out the place cards so everybody knows where to sit. Why are we putting out place cards, Taryn? I think you know. Because as we're putting out place cards, we're saying, "Oh, we can't put Becky next to Teresa because they hate each other," and "Oh, we can't put Carol next to Judy because you know them. They're going to be they're going to be gossiping and pointing fingers and laughing at making fun of everybody all night. And we can't put this person next to this person, and we can't put this person next to this person. And hell, if I'm sitting next to Bernetta, I can't stand her." And we're doing this and saying, "This is ridiculous. These
Mhm.
are people that we spend every day with." And cliche alert, but it's true, we spend more time with our work family than our real family in many cases. So our relationships with the people we spend so much time with are so important,
Yeah.
so important. And we're standing there saying, "This is ridiculous. This is our business. We are the ones running this business, yet we've got all this underbelly stuff going on with gossiping and finger pointing, people not getting along, us not getting along, people not wanting to. It's made no sense." We said, "We're going to make a goal. It's a 1 year goal. Next year, we're going to come to this exact same table, no name tags, because every single person in this office will enjoy the company of everybody else, us included. That doesn't mean we have to go on ski vacations together, but it means that when we spend our time in the office, we have to respect one another, enjoy each other's company, have each other's backs, like I talked about before." And, working in a dental office, I've never served in the military. I've the most incredible respect for people who serve in the military, but I would imagine the bonding experience of your fellow members of whatever branch you're in is so strong because you spend so much time together and you're actually responsible for one another's lives.
Mm.
And I feel like I want to have that kind of bond with the people in my dental practice where we are there for each other no matter what. And a lot of this started with the seating chart rule. And we said, next year, when we come back here, we are not going to need a seating chart. And this is our goal. And sure enough, we let a few weeks pass, but then the new year came because this was a holiday party. And some people needed what might be called a good talking to, saying, "Hey,
Mm.
you do incredible work, but the backstabbing, the gossiping, there's no place for this here. There really shouldn't be a place for this in your life at all." And I really think it will behoove you to try to improve that aspect of your life. And it'll make your work life better, whatever. And I was amazed how receptive people were to it.
Mm.
And everybody except one person took it very seriously and really worked hard to improve and thanked us all for helping them with this. I needed some help in it too. I'll fully admit it. I needed some help as well. One person just couldn't get it into their life to become, better in this aspect of their lives, and they had to get what we call a job opportunity elsewhere. But everybody was up to the challenge, and everybody knew that it will make their life better as well. So I would say start with the seating chart rule.
I love it.
Yeah, tried
And
to
you
give one tip for how to get started.
also touched on something really interesting. We tell ourselves for some reason that when we feel like there's a little bit of discomfort between ourselves and one of the team members, that it's something that only we feel, and it's actually felt both ways. And when you have the courage to have that conversation, whether it's about better performance, about something that's not actually cutting it in terms of their personality or their the way that they integrate with other team members or with patients, they feel it too. And it's almost always a relief when you can have the conversation that the other person's usually experiencing some kind of stress or strain around the exact same thing.
It's so true. I'll take this on a little aside too, but I think it's important to bring up because you're a consultant. I don't know if you call yourself a coach or a consultant. I'm not sure what the difference is. I've used both terms, but people contact me. They contact you. They want to learn how we can help their practice, and we tell them what we do. And some of them say yes, I'd love to move forward. Some of them say no, I'm just not ready yet, or it's not for me. Whatever, fine. It's that's cool. But I think if you're outside of our profession, or maybe a lot of people in our profession as well as consultants, think that the number one reason is the money. They're just not ready to spend that money. They don't see the value in it. And of course, for some people, that's true. But I'm convinced, after doing this for so many years, that the number one reason people do not follow through with coaching or consulting is because they're afraid of a team member. This
Mm.
oh it just this person, they're just gonna give me a hard time. They're not gonna like it. They're gonna object. They're gonna mutiny. They're gonna this. They're gonna that.
Yeah.
And so many dentists, again, I've done all these bad things. I was in this situation too. I had a team member that I was afraid of.
Yes. I think
I
we've
was
all been
afraid to
there.
cross her.
We've all been there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I thought if I brought in a consultant, this was way back when in my practice, that she'd flip out. Or if I tried to
Yeah.
change something we did, she'd flip out. She's such a great assistant, I'm thinking of one person in particular. She made temporaries better than Leonardo da Vinci could have. I mean, and she's such a great assistant. I don't want to ruffle her feathers. But then I kind of had this moment, and she actually appreciated, I think, because it was pressure for her too, being this queen bee. And I think she really appreciated the fact that we addressed it, and she really improved her, that aspect of her performance. Some people will, some won't. But man, a team member holding you hostage is so
So
stressful.
painful.
And you're right, we've all been there.
We've all been there. Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
so good. Oh my gosh, Rich, I could talk to you all day. There are a million other things
Same.
that I want to talk about.
Eh,
And this very precious question, it's my final question to you. But before I ask you, I would love for you to share with our audience. We're going to put a link in the show notes of how to contact you. But if anyone's listening to this right now and they're like, I got to work with Dr. Madow's team, could you please tell us how audience members could get in touch with you to find out more about the services you provide?
well, thank you so much. I mean, the easiest way is I'll give you my personal email address. It's just rich@madow.com, RICH at MAD, 1D. So RICH at MADOW.com. Please send me an email, whether you want to work together or not. If you have a question or a comment, you think this material is awesome, you think we're both crazy, I don't care what the comment is. I'd love to hear it. So rich@madow.com is the best way to get in touch with me personally. Our website is madow.com, MADOW.com. If you go in there, you can see about some of the things we do. If you want to bring me in to your organization as a speaker, I've got my meeting manager's package on there. That would be awesome. And we have a podcast as well. It's called the Dental Practice Fixers. And you can just look for that on, wherever you listen to podcasts. I do mystery shopper calls at the end of every podcast, which are, I hate to say they're funny, but they are, but they're also very instructive. So I know a lot of practices use those for their team meetings. So those are the best ways. Rich@madow.com. Our website's madow.com. Podcast is the Dental Practice Fixers.
Amazing. Okay, final question. What is your definition of happiness?
Oh man, talk. Do you have that map of the Middle East
I
again?
know it.
I think, okay, I'm going to give you kind of a BS answer to this, but it kind of reminds me. I feel like I'm telling all these old stories. This was, geez, from the 60s in the Supreme Court when there was some pornography case came up to the Supreme Court, and they asked one of the justices, "Well, what's your definition of pornography?" And he said, "Well, I don't have a definition, but I know it when I see it," which
Yeah.
is ironic in so many ways.
Yeah.
So, I think it's the same way for happiness, and I don't think it's because it's impossible to define. I think it's because it's different for every person.
Yeah.
I think when you're really happy, there's this inner feeling inside of you where you know that, yes, life is stressful. Yes, life can suck sometimes. Yes, horrible things happen to the best people. But I've got this inner peace
Mm.
that helps me deal with it and helps me wake up every morning looking forward to what I'm going to do that day. And a lot of it is you just, for some reason, something turns on in your life where you're truly grateful for what you have. And I feel like I'm just telling all these stories where it says it reminds me of this, it reminds me of that. I'll tell you one more quick story because I think it's
Please
really
do.
important.
Yes.
I was at a dental lecture many years ago, and I was a young dentist at the time. And it was this famous dental lecturer. He's long gone, and he kept talking about how to make more money, how to make more
Mm.
money, how to make more money. And somebody said, well, he raised their hand and said, well, isn't it true that money can't buy happiness? And this lecturer said, yeah, money can't buy happiness, but you can be miserable in some really great places. And I thought, I know he said it for comedic intent, but so many people feel that way.
Mm.
I thought, who the heck wants to be miserable in real? I'd rather be happy living in a cramped apartment,
Mm.
not having a lot of material goods than being in the biggest mansion in
Yeah.
Malibu, but being miserable. So again, I know I'm going off on tangents here, but I think it's important for us to realize that these things that we think are part of happiness don't necessarily make us happy. And don't get me wrong, if you love cars and want to drive a $200,000 Porsche Carrera GT and you can afford it, and that just gives you some kind of cool vibe, go for it, man.
Mm.
It's great. But that's not going to make you happy. What is going to make you truly happy is the gratitude that you have for what you've earned, what you've been given, what you're a part of. I know, I think we both start every morning with a moment of gratitude. Everybody does theirs a little differently, but I kind of stand on my little balcony here in downtown Baltimore, hopefully watching the sunrise and just think, wow, I'm really grateful that I'm here. I'm grateful for what I have. I'm grateful that I am living in a country where we have clean running water and internet and electricity and plentiful food because so many people in the world aren't. And it's really sad. So, my long winded answer to your brief question.
Beautiful. I loved your whole long-winded answer. It was perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, awesome.
And thank you for this beautiful long-winded interview. This was fabulous. I think it was so valuable, every single component of what we talked about here. So I really appreciate you joining me here on the show today.
Tarrant, it's my pleasure. I'm so glad you asked me to be on the show. I think what you do is just incredible. So many people teach other important aspects of dental practice success, but not enough people talk about happiness. I know we both do, and I'm so glad that you do. And I'm just thrilled that I got to be on your show.
Ditto, ditto. And thank you to all of you for joining us here today and wishing you a fantastic week ahead. And remember, you can always check in with Dr. Madow at those links that we'll put in the show note for you. And remember, when you feel good, that's when you can do good. Bye bye. Thank you for listening to the Business of Happiness podcast. If this episode brought you new perspective and value, I invite you to subscribe so that you catch all upcoming episodes and leave us a review. And if you know of a friend or colleague who could benefit from this perspective, share this episode with them and empower their day. For more information about the Business of Happiness and the Radical Happiness for Practitioners course, find me on www.thebizofhappiness.com. See you there.